Hi, I'm Nicole.
I'm Geraldine.
I'm Lauren.
And we are
Doing the Damn Thing, an entrepreneurship talk show.
So today's episode, we are going to be talking about work-life balance, the one thing we're always aiming for. And we have a lovely guest, my friend Tanya. So she runs 3 businesses, and she has 2 children and 1 on the way, and she's married. So if there's anyone to talk about work-life balance, it is Tanya. So Tanya, you want to tell us a little bit about your businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually 2, but okay. I also work part-time though. So one of my businesses is nail products. I love getting my nails done. So I have a soybean-based nail polish remover, and then I'm coming out with the nail polish line in June.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about that. I'm wearing the colors. And the other one is children's Spanish books and also jewelry. So it's like a subscription box for mom and child.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, with the book and the...
Yeah, so mom gets something for herself to keep her stylish, and then the kids will get the Spanish books to continue sort of the... Yeah. So there's nothing out there like it, which I'm really excited. So that's the second one. And then I work for a family resource center part-time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's dive into it. Okay. All right, you have your businesses, you have your family. So how, I guess we could all discuss, what are the tricks and tips we all do, to keep those 2 on an even kill, I guess? Is it about balance? Is it about priorities? I always get different opinions. So.
Yeah. I think for me it's priorities, and my calendar's tight most weeks, but I definitely do think it has to do with prioritizing, because I'm working on another really huge special project, which is maybe that's why you thought I had 3 businesses. I'm doing a conference next year, and so it's 1 week I might focus solely on my nail business, and then maybe the next week it'll be a balance of everything, and then I think when it comes to family, I think it's definitely tough, but I think you just learn to prioritize and set aside time to be with the hubby or to be with your child. And so definitely prioritizing, and then keeping a calendar. I gotta write everything down, because if it's not on my calendar, it does not exist.
Yeah. Do you actually write it down, or do you have a digital calendar?
Digital, thank you, because I loved the paper. I'm still a paper kind of gal, and I tried last year to maintain my paper calendar. But it was tough, because then it was I was busting out the cell phone, but then I was also taking out the agenda. So that wasn't working for me. So I just decided to stick with one, and that was the phone, because it was much more easier. So but I'm definitely a paper person too.
You mentioned prioritization, so I'm really curious, because for some of us, everything's a priority. So how do you what are the factors you look at to distinguish what's a priority? Is it time or...
That's a great question, though. I think it's the timeline. Yeah, depending on where things are at especially because I run 2 businesses and I'm working on this special project and I work, it's really about what is due next week, and then also looking at the bigger picture. I think as entrepreneurs, one thing that I don't do as well is the social content calendar when it comes to social media, which I think you're an expert on that. But that in itself is, I would say that's my biggest struggle. But in the bigger picture of things, that's sort of how I look at all of my businesses. Yeah. I have to look 3 months ahead, and then see, what's due next week, what can wait till 4 weeks, and then sort of plan it that way. So I think it's just based on timelines and what's due when.
Being protective of certain times, I think, is really important, especially as women. Typically, we can feel like we need to be available, overly available to people, but then that really does steal from you and your ability to do everything, especially if you do have so much going on. The other day, someone asked me if I could meet up with them on a Sunday. It was like a networking thing, and I guess I could, but I also have some priorities for myself in that time. And and like you might have the priorities of like, no, this is family time, right? This is my time. This is my family time. I don't have children and a husband, but I still get to protect my time.
Absolutely.
You know? But getting clear, one thing we just did in our team with our calendars is also noticing when you're more productive at certain tasks. And it's taken us so long to get to that point. But finally, I just wrote down, like, on Mondays, this is typically how I feel. And like, I start to come out of the weekend about 12 o'clock. And so like really setting the times of like, no, this is for that activity. Like I take client meetings during these times, and being really a stickler for sticking to those too.
Yeah. I agree.
One of my other entrepreneur friends, I was taken aback a little bit, but she but then I realized she was just protecting her time. She made it clear since the get-go that we weren't going to do any filming on the weekends. Weekends were just like her to do her own thing. And I was just like, well, that doesn't always work for me. But then I was like, well, I get it. You're protecting your time, right?
Yeah.
So it's the whole, so I think like when you're working with people, you have to also work with them balancing their lives, and you have to balance your life and coming together.
Yeah.
So going back to family, we all have family members, and also like family obligations, like events, we want to see them. So how do you go about like telling maybe your family that you can't do something because of work, and then also telling your work you can't do something because of family, and like
even if you're your own boss, right?
Yeah. It's like how do you guys decide that?
The interesting thing about that for me is that I've grown up in a family of very hard workers. So I've always felt like it was okay to say, oh, I can't, I'm working.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
So it was never an issue. There's never a guilt trip, whereas other people here, they get guilt trips from their family. But just because we grew up in that culture of hard workers, it was like, okay.
Yeah.
Or mom's at work, dad's at work, or Geraldine's at work, she's not here.
Yeah. Working in restaurants growing up, like I can't tell you how many Christmases I spent at work with my family at the table and me serving them. Like coming into my job, like there's a joke in my family that's how we hang out is at each other's jobs. And it's like, it's funny, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Who else is married here?
I am.
You are, and you two are not. Okay.
I'm single. She has she's in a relationship. So
Okay.
even talking about that, like as a single woman feeling guilty about like, because moms are like, no, I have my kids and I have to do this, and everyone's like, okay, cool, and it's hands off on that topic. But even as a single woman, like I don't have a husband, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have whatever, or a partner of any sort.
But you want to protect your time.
Yeah,
as well.
so I get to say, it's like being a smoker. I've heard a lot of people saying, well, I'd like to quit smoking, but that's the only smokers really take breaks. Like that's okay for a smoke break. So when I quit smoking cigarettes, I started taking a fresh air break because I was like, you know what, screw that. So
that's so true though. That's so funny.
Like being okay with being like, no, like I just want to date me for a second. I need a date with myself.
Yeah.
So important. Self-care.
Definitely. Well, for me, the reason I was asking, because the only person I really need to report to is my husband. So I think as long as the communication is open and I'm consistently sharing with him what's on my calendar and communicating that, then that's what helps our marriage. And, that hasn't always been an easy thing for me, though, either, because I think just marriage in general is really hard for me to get used to sharing my life. So I've gotten better at it, and definitely family, special events like birthdays, I really, I put them on my calendar, and like you said, like make time for them. But that's probably about it. Just really the communication with
That's
the
a
husband.
good point. Like, I think you must have a lot of teamwork with your husband to be able to do all the things you're doing. So, like,
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, the agreements that you guys have made to make that work?
Absolutely. Definitely, I'm not ashamed to say it, and I because, a lot of couples do it, but we actually do go to marriage counseling once a week, and I think
it's
that's
awesome.
helped us. Yeah, that's definitely helped us, and it's helped me. And again, what we try to do is at least every 2 weeks sit down and go over my calendar, right? Because I'm the one that's busy.
Have a job.
He has a job.
9 to 5,
he has a job,
like,
but he's also a homebody, and he just supports everything that I do. So for us, what works is when I'm sharing my calendar with him, and not just the calendar, but one of the things I came to learn from, therapy was that sharing your goals and your dreams. So a lot of the times I wasn't sharing the bigger picture of what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
I was just saying, oh, I got to do this, and oh, I'm doing this weekend, and I'm going to go to this networking event and this dinner. But he really wasn't understanding why or for what reason. And so that's now become part of our conversation, and I have to say that it's helped tremendous. And why not, right?
Yeah.
So definitely getting together at least twice a week to go over my calendar and go over certain things.
Twice a week?
No, every
Twice
2
a
weeks.
month.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
every
wow,
2
twice
weeks,
a week
sorry.
you are busy.
Yeah.
But still, that's a lot.
No,
to
every
manage,
2 weeks
so.
we go over it, and then and sometimes, again, like you guys are definitely right. With kids, it's sometimes hard. So there are weeks where, as long as I send him a text or a Facebook message and say, hey, I got these things on my calendar, and before I forget, I want to make sure I share them with you.
Yeah.
Again, just communication.
Nick has typical 9 to 5, right? And for me, and he's also more productive in the morning. I'm more productive in the evening. I'm just like, the 3 o'clock hour is actually like my hour to shine. I'm like, yes, that's my best hour. But, and then anything after that, I'm great. But one of the things I realized is that even though, like, going back to balance, that's like my great time, that's also when he's coming home. So I had to we had to compromise, where I would tell him, I'm like, I'm in my zone, and I'm going to probably work until 7 or 8, and then afterwards it could be us time. Because I felt like I was taking away time from us, where I'm working at 10 because I'm just really excited. But he's like, I just got home and we haven't hung out. And so we had to really have that talk and that communication of all right, I know my job is I'm out and about, and I'm working from home, but then I'm also, doing filming, and I'm always all over the place. But this is when I'm working. Mm-hmm. And having that communication. I think communication with anyone in your family is key. Going back to you, some people not having you don't have the guilt trip. I feel like sometimes I have the guilt trip with my family, just because they all had typical 9 to 5, and I think sometimes it's hard for them. I think we discussed this before, that entrepreneurship isn't a job, so they're just but you're not working.
So can't you just make your schedule?
Yeah.
You make your own schedule.
Yeah.
Would you mind
So.
going to the store and picking that up?
Yeah. And they're just why can't you come every weekend? I'm like, well, I have these events, and they're like, oh.
But your family is, are they in Southern California?
No, they're actually 2 hours away.
Oh, okay. But 2
They're in
hours
Holland.
is 2 hours.
Yeah,
I mean,
going
that's
back
4
and-
hours,
yeah.
really.
Yeah, that's
you
it.
know?
And actually, and it's just so funny because they think because I can make your own schedule that everything should be easier.
Right.
So why can't you
And I think actually in the beginning as an entrepreneur, I also thought that oh yeah, I can fit everything in, and so it was a lesson that I had to learn too.
Yeah.
And knowing when to really set those boundaries, even with maybe your kids. Maybe there are times when you have to be look, mommy just can't be here right now. Just like anyone in a normal 9 to 5, maybe that travels for the work or something. It's just sometimes that's really real. And I've had moments, and I think I'm in a moment now too about deciding whether or not to date, or to having to say now is not a good time for that because of the impact that it will have on the progress of what I'm doing and the greater good. But I saw this YouTube, there was some commercial on YouTube with this guy who starts talking about how he's like, you guys, I have to admit something. I am a bad dad. And he said, well, I used to be, but because I was always so focused on the greater good for my family of their success and their support, that he was absent a lot from the business.
Yeah.
So do you have any guilt around that,
Yeah.
or thoughts around that, or how do you kind of grapple with that long-term goal versus losing those moments of your 2-year-old?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Especially because on some weekends I do events too for my businesses to get the face-to-face events are important for both of my businesses, right? Because they're still growing. So that's definitely a guilt trip. However, I think what I did this year was that I learned to say no. I had to learn to say no, to take care of myself and my family, and also trust that in saying no, things were going to be okay and things will still work out. And it's that whole thing of, just believing in yourself and the universe. And so this year, what I did when it does come time to events, it's, summertime. Summertime is the best time for all of these events that happen in San Francisco and Oakland and all over the place. So I had a conversation with my husband, and I think that was it, that it was, summertime, let's know that I will be busy. You will help me out. And also focusing, the more you're in the business, the more you kind of narrow down what events are actually worth doing,
Right.
and
Yeah,
then what
getting
events
clear.
are not.
Yeah.
Which is
So-
also helped by being really clear on your goals.
Yes,
Right? Because
absolutely.
that's how
Your
you can-
goals, your niche market, your audience, all of that good stuff. So this year, in terms of weekends, the planning part of it has gone a lot better because I'm doing events that are maybe like 3-4 hours, and they're specifically for the market that I need to be in, and also I'm being selective. I mean, one thing is also you're paying for these events too, so it does get costly. So in time, you start realizing, well, maybe that event I paid $200 to be at that event, but that wasn't really worth it, right? So that comes with experience. And I've been running the children's book business. I've been doing it for about 3 years, and then the nail polish is going on about 2 years. But again, it's just really kind of the first year you're always busy and you're trying to do everything. But it's also the most where I learned the most, and I figured out, okay, let's take a step back. Let's do this in a more strategic way. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you get better at that. And so I think that's where I'm at this year. But absolutely, I think I do still sometimes feel guilty, but maybe not as much as before because now I'm
it helps
doing
that
it.
you have the support of your husband.
Yeah, and definitely
Yeah.
because he watches our son, and now I have a baby girl on the way. The dynamics will change because it's a lot different taking care of one child, let alone two. So absolutely, that will in time that will have to be something that we discuss and work out as well too. So yeah.
So what about self-care? Do you schedule that for yourself? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, self-care for me is actually kind of easy because I love getting my nails done.
It's a write-off? Is that a write-off for you?
It is. It's a write-off, and it's self-care, and it's business.
Start a business around what you like to do for yourself.
And a really good calendar tells you what you can write off.
Exactly. Yes, I know what to write off, what's not. But no, so for me, getting my nails done. I was just telling my husband the other day, we were talking about self-care, and I was like, I gotta get my nails done. So every 2 weeks, I'm getting my nails done, sometimes every week. So that's self-care. I also love going to the movies. And then every 3-4 months, I'll go, dance my butt off and I'll go clubbing or something. That's self-care for me, definitely the time that I take to, go get my hair done and my nails did.
Yeah, very good. And I think that is very important for any entrepreneur. Is you're balancing your work and your obligations to family and friends, but you also really do have to take time out just for you and what makes you happy. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, then how good are you going to be for everybody else?
So what do you do for self-care?
Sometimes I feel like I'm more like an introvert. Self-care for me is just being at home and watching, I'm really basic, watching just Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
But watching it by myself. That is self-care. Or actually taking time out to read a book is self-care for me. I want to be that alone time where I don't have to answer to anyone.
Yeah.
And putting my phone away, I think I mentioned this before, on my social media, it's I've let my phone die on Saturday night, and so that way I'm I can't answer on Sunday, because it's dead. And it's
Okay, whatever works for you.
because
I know that charger's right there,
but I know for me, because if my phone is dead and it's charging and I don't see it, then I don't have to look at social media. I'm not tempted to answer emails, so then I can really focus on taking care of me.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you do for self-care?
Oh, me.
Oh, you?
I like to read a lot, just like you. I also like to meditate and study about the law of attraction, and I love to eat. So, I do love eating with people and having dinners and stuff like that, but every time I'm by myself and having a really good meal, I'm just
Feeling it.
yeah, I love that. Or
I'm so with you on that
yeah,
too.
and another thing is listening to music in the car and just dancing on the freeway.
Yeah.
Just singing the lyrics. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Letting yourself do that, yeah. I wrote a poem when I was in 7th grade. I still remember it. I don't know where this came from because 7th grade, what are you doing? But it was from the standpoint of a homeless person or someone that didn't have a home that was sitting on the side of the road and observing the people going by. And one of the lines was something like, you can tell the people that are carefree because they're singing to the music or something.
Oh.
It just stays in my mind.
Yeah,
I wish
do you have it?
I don't know. Probably I could find
it.
it. I know. But I'm God, that was so insightful.
Yeah.
And I have another story about my poetry, but I'll leave that for another other day. For me, my self-care it's similar to what you guys are talking about, like especially being so social and always interacting. It's like the self-care is allowing yourself to shut down, be quiet, put all the blinds down, or just sit in the sun, be outside. A lot of my self-care is about connecting with nature and water, and just feeling like I'm trying to remember to date myself. That concept of, give yourself flowers once in a while, cook yourself dinner. Well, I don't know. Order someone else to cook a dinner for you. But
I love the outdoor part too, though, because we live in cities
inside,
and urban jungle, and so I think camping.
Yeah.
I've got to do camping at least 3 times a year, and
Touch some
I'll
trees,
figure out, be in the dirt and just be outside of the city, and that's important too. And meditation, which is something I'm trying to get into. I'd love to do it more. That one's a little harder for me, but I'm getting there.
Tips.
Okay, because
and
that's
we
something I
actually
really
have an
want to do.
episode about that.
Oh yeah, Nancy came by and we talked about like spirituality and meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you can watch it on Doing the
definitely.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to watch it. Yeah, because it's something that I've been honestly wanting to get into a little bit more. It's meditation,
And I think it's so
quieting
important for
that mind.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think you mentioned something earlier about a time frame, and I know that for me, my mind races. So if it was up to me, I'd be working the entire day. But typically for me, mornings are the best. And then what I do is when I get home and I have my family, we do the dinner, we hang out. And I'm kind of lucky because my husband goes to bed really early. Like he goes to bed at like 8. Right? Yeah. So between my husband between my husband and my child, they're in bed by 9.
Wow.
So I get back on my laptop and I work from like 9 to 11, 9 to 12. And so that's also the time where I get a lot of it done. Also momentum. There's certain projects that have momentum that I really have to kind of go with them.
Otherwise.
And so I think, again, when we talk about prioritizing and what you have to take care of, it's dependent, too, on the momentum that's happening within your business. Because if there's high momentum, you don't want to let that go. So you're trying to keep that.
It's harder to ramp back up once you.
Yeah, so that also comes into play as an entrepreneur as well, too.
Final tips of balancing work and life, personal and professional, for the audience.
Yeah.
Final tips.
One would be to get really clear about your personal values. That's something that's very new for me. I always knew like what I kind of had preferences for, or I kind of leaned toward doing some things rather than others, but getting clear about my values really helped me to make clearer decisions. So I would just have my little list of values and I just look at them, like do all these things in my calendar or what other people are asking me to do align with that, and if they don't, then it's probably not something that I should prioritize.
Just like do what fills you up. Make sure you have at least, let's say, a half hour a week, which is very minimal, at least that of something that fills you up to the brim.
For me, I think it's just being honest with yourself about what your needs are. And I do think that sometimes I need to check in and take that time to say, okay, what's going on? What's like you were saying, what's your goal? What's priority for you? And let's make sure that's within everything that you do. So.
So my tip is a little twofold. Is one, give yourself grace when you feel overwhelmed that maybe you're just not hanging out with your friends enough or your family enough, when you're not doing enough for your business. Just realize you did what you can. So give yourself grace and learn from that. And then 2 is figure out early on the type of relationship you have with each of your friends. So I have friends that I know I'm probably going to see in person maybe every other month because our schedules are so chaotic, but they will not require, but it just works best if we message each other like every day or every week on Facebook. So knowing what kind of relationships you have with everyone and going in that relationship and knowing it, because I feel like you can get really overwhelmed when you think you're not communicating with everyone, you're not hanging out with everyone. But if you just know the guidelines for that friendship and that relationship and give yourself grace, it makes things a little bit easier.
That was a good one, the grace one.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, because
Wait, I want to say that.
that's very true, though. I've
Yeah.
had to do that recently, and again, it goes back to just trusting yourself, the universe, and being kind to yourself as well, too.
I've been picking up that word a lot this last month. It's like grace. Nicole.
Yeah.
And do like what is that other saying? Like this too shall pass.
Yeah.
yeah.
And like that saying, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I think that's like a biblical saying or something. I'm not sure, but I'm like, whatever. I'm gonna yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I
So
like that.
thank you guys so much for watching our episode of Balancing Work Life and all that good stuff. Thank you, Tanya, again for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, make sure to come back next week for our next episode, and don't forget to subscribe, like, ring that bell, ask the questions in the comments, and share all that good stuff. All right, bye y'all.
Yeah.
Bye.